Hi, seventh graders. Mr. Songer here with you for the makeup lesson for lesson number 7. Right now we are working on our solos, and I want to give you some tidbits today on how to practice those solos so you can achieve an ultimate level of musicality when you play. And for your makeup for this lesson, what I'd like you to do is to create a paragraph of the items that I talk about in this video, and the paragraph can just be a summary of some of the highlights. So I'm going to go through some things that you should do when you play your solo, or when you practice your solo, so that you can make it sound really musical and really top-notch and go beyond just playing the correct notes and the correct rhythm. So the first bit of information I want to encourage you to do is to follow your dynamic markings. Dynamics can change a piece. If you play a song with no dynamics and it's just loud the whole time or a medium volume the whole time, it will lack that special something that draws people to your song. I always think of the famous Surprise Symphony by Franz Joseph Haydn, where his second movement of that symphony was really, really soft. It's the one that goes bum, 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 and it almost lulls you to sleep. And then out of nowhere he has this huge forte accented chord that the entire orchestra plays, and it just completely startles you. And that wouldn't happen if you didn't follow the dynamics. So it's very important to play those dynamics. It draws people in, it brings out emotion in the music and therefore in the listener, and makes the piece very exciting. So follow your dynamic markings. The second thing is to follow your articulation markings. Those would be things like your slurs, your staccatos, your tenutos, the dashes that mean full length, your accents, your marcatos, any articulation markings that you see above the notes. It's important to follow these, again, because it gives the music some variety. If all the notes had the same attack and the same length, the music wouldn't be as exciting as if you have maybe a song that you want to kind of invoke the feelings of a dance, so you make the notes very short or maybe kind of accented, and gives the music a little toe tapping feel to it, okay, as opposed to something that is maybe very sad and drawn out, and therefore you want to make the notes very long and connect them and give it feeling that way. Something that's very energetic and upbeat and exciting, or something that wants to prove a point, it's going to have a lot of accents in it, so you got to really hit those notes to give that song some feeling. So articulation markings, vitally important to make your song sound musical. The third thing is phrasing. Phrasing is a very underrated aspect of playing, I've noticed amongst middle school students. Phrasing means, where are you going to take your breaths? Now, some music has breath marks, or some music has phrase markings, the big long slur marks over a series of notes, that indicates when you should take a breath. If you have a piece of music that does that, then follow that. Only breathe in those spots, because that's going to make your music sound more cohesive and give it more feeling, and have it make more sense. If you just take breaths at random places, it's like when you speak. If you just started talking and making weird places where you take breaths, and then people wouldn't really drop. You see what I'm saying? So you have to do that. You have to put the breath marks in the right place. Now, if you have a piece of music that has no breath marks or no phrase markings, and it's very unclear of when to take a breath, I'd encourage you to, first of all, just think about maybe taking a breath every 4 measures. Sometimes that is a very common amount of measures to go on one breath. Sometimes it might be every 2, especially on a slower piece. And if it's a really fast piece, sometimes it's every 8. But you should try to be very consistent with that. And some people's pieces are a little more confusing than that. You start throwing in pickup notes or odd phrases. Sometimes it's just worth your time to come in and talk to me about it and say, hey, Mr. Songer, where should I breathe on this piece? Or another way you can go about it is find it on YouTube and listen to it and see if you can figure out where the phrases stop and start. So very important to phrase. The fourth thing is simply playing with a good tone. I always say that's the most important thing in playing music, is to have a good sound on your instrument. Okay, you play with a good sound, again, you can bring out the musicality and the emotion in a song by just having a very beautiful sound on your instrument. Or if it's a very intense, angry piece or a very joyful song, having a very bright sound on your instrument, okay? Or if it's a very sad piece, playing with a very mellow sound, coming up with a sound. And again, if you listen to your piece on YouTube, if you can find it, you can listen to who's playing it and listen to their sound and try to emulate that sound when you're practicing. So far we've talked about dynamics, we've talked about articulations, we've talked about phrasing, and we've talked about a good tone. The last thing I just want to mention is just simply listening to your piece, and I've already mentioned that a couple times. When you listen to somebody play it who's a professional and somebody who knows your piece really well, and you listen to them play it, you can learn a lot by just simply, again, trying to imitate what you're hearing. And sometimes it's not easy to imitate exactly what you're hearing, because it might be somebody who's a professional who's been playing for 30, 40 years, who's taken way more music lessons than you have up to this point. And there's only so much you can do after 4 years of playing. However, you'd be amazed if you listen to something over and over and over again and then you start practicing it. A lot of that stuff just starts settling into your mind when you play it, and you'll notice yourself starting to play it like you're listening to it. Maybe not with the same accuracy of notes or at the same speed or getting the high notes great or getting that roll just perfect, or things like that may not be to the level of a professional. But I've heard a lot of middle school students play some incredibly musical solos because they've listened to it and they've imitated it. So you have that ability to do that. So take these things into account. Again, for your makeup, write a paragraph that just summarizes those things I just talked about, and then go practice your solo. Go find it on YouTube and listen to it, and go think about things like dynamics, articulations, phrase markings, playing with a good tone. Thank you for listening.